Welcome back. You're watching Eagle News Mornings from Canada. I'm Archie Rose Natividad from Vancouver, British Columbia. It's 7:16 a.m. Even the state of Hawaii is not taking chances in allowing any form of violence, especially in light of what happened in Washington, D.C. At the same time, January 17th holds a pivotal moment in the Aloha State's history. Joining us live is Eagle News correspondent Alfred DeSenes to tell us more. Good morning, Alfred.
Aloha, Archie, and to our viewers around the world, and not to, just for assurance for you, Archie, weather-wise, here in the islands, we are catching up with some cooler temperatures. I think we're hovering close to 24 degrees Celsius, and it will get cooler in February, which is our coldest month. Now, you mentioned Trump supporters that are continuing to do what they do best, especially in the past few months, even after the election. And I think we have a video I want to share with you all, which our team and I have taken over the recent weeks, even months. Now, this one actually happened on the 6th of January, almost the same time as the riots in Washington, D.C. Now, there was another one yesterday, Saturday, at Kapiolani Park, not far from the beaches of Waikiki. Albeit it's much smaller. However, again, the presence is not going to go away. And suffice to say, the demonstrations or the gatherings like you see on top of the freeway during rush hour, this was sometime last year after the election, it's generally been peaceful, and it's not really that significant, especially in a state which is, for Hawaii, which is traditionally a blue state. So, and this is another one. This is the one that we shot yesterday at Kapiolani Park. This was about the time that they were getting ready to adjourn their march around the park. So the presence is there, but not that significant to cause any kind of any commotion, if you will. But what we wanted to touch on, Archie, and our viewers out there, is that today, January 17th, is a very critical, important time for Hawaii. It is the anniversary of the fall of the kingdom back in January of 1893. But what we want to emphasize, and this is just some footage that we want to share with you when we shot the anniversary back in 2018. It's a big deal. What's really a good takeaway out of this is not just what happened to the kingdom at the hands of the American forces that instigated this, but how the situation was handled by particularly their queen, Liliuokalani, the last monarch to rule the islands. And bottom line up front, how she handled it was with a great deal of dignity and a lot of calm and a conviction for nonviolence. Even after attempts, opportunities for the native Hawaiians, for the residents there to take up arms and restore the monarchy, she instead went through the more diplomatic route by talking to the President of the United States at that time. I think it was Grover Cleveland in 1893, and then have the Congress repeal the annexation, because that was what they were doing when they overthrew the kingdom. Americans, the group of Americans who led this, had the plans to annex Hawaii, eventually to become a territory and a state. What she did instead was to go through any due process in order for any kind of reversal to make it really smooth and not, it did not cost lives. But repeatedly, she really promoted nonviolence, and that is something that for us here in Hawaii, it's still possible even to this day. We saw a Black Lives Matter movement in the same place at the state capitol last summer in other parts of the island. Generally nonviolent. There were no arrests, no riots, no nothing, which means it's possible to effect change without having to start what took place in D.C. on January the 6th. So if that's the takeaway that we would like to impart here in Hawaii to the rest of the world. And I would imagine Canada has its own share of leaders at various levels who also promoted peaceful transition, peaceful change through nonviolence. Oh, by the way, Archie, Monday here is a federal holiday in honor of another leader of nonviolence, Martin Luther King Jr.
That is fantastic. It's amazing how the movement and the peaceful protests there are very reminiscent of how the Queen had handled back in the day, and ensuring that things remain nonviolent and that the atmosphere remains peaceful. And you're certainly right. A leader of that is Martin Luther King, and fortunately, there is a day to celebrate that, and hopefully other leaders out there are able to learn that it is possible to have a difference of opinions, but to have it remain nonviolent, to have it to be peaceful and harmonious for everybody. So lots to learn from Hawaiians and Hawaii, and definitely the rest of us should follow suit, right? So thank you so much for that, Alfred. We want to change gears here a little bit in how, BC is connected with Hawaii right now. So there has been a controversy with Canadian politicians in particular and other Canadian government officials who have gone to Hawaii for vacation during this time. What do residents think? Can you share some thoughts about that?
I'm going to tell you this, Archie, and not to discredit the great province of BC. Your leaders are not the politicians, not the only ones from there that are doing that. You have folks from the U.S. mainland. I think we also had some government officials from Australia, Oceania, who decided to take a vacation last year, about the time I think our state had the second surge of COVID-19. In many cases, I'm not going to say all, in many cases, when something like that happens, and even for those here in charge who travel elsewhere, sometimes, it may be mission related in some cases. It also may have something to do with being able to carry out their duties as elected officials, government officials, and whatnot. And many times you have this vetting process in which their lawyers, their legal team would kind of ensure that they don't get in trouble. And there's also kind of like a PR team, a communications team, in which to send out a positive message to the public. It's like, okay, this is what government official, Jay Suarez is doing, in Seattle, with the mission to do this or that. So it's not a new thing, and it's an ongoing, matter in which it's not going to be without scrutiny. As a matter of fact, let me give you another example that's also creating some stir here in Hawaii lately, actually this week, is that the vaccination is ongoing, and there's going to be a massive effort this week, I think, to vaccinate incoming passengers off a cruise liner. Now, they're visitors, they're tourists, but, it's causing a stir to residents here to ask the question, hey, what about the rest of us? Now, keeping in mind, though, that we have a growing tourist population that still needs to be taken care of. So there's going to have to be a balance in which it will not please everybody. And I think really what's important is to get a message out there to, on behalf, by the local government to the public that, vaccination, we got to vaccinate as many people as possible, because even visitors, regardless of how long they stay here, can be a carrier. It can be a hazard to others. So that's a mitigation effort that's going to be ongoing. It's not going to go away. But at the same time, we're doing our best to vaccinate, those who need it the most, the first responders and the elderly. So guess what?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's never ending.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.